Well, I am Jennifer Hayes. I am the practice leader for Clark & Levy. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I am excited to introduce you to Professor Russ Norris. He is a retired Marine Corps Mustang, 22 years of active service. He has done operations all over the world. His military background is just amazing. And so I first want to thank you, Russ, for your service. It's an honor to speak with you and have you here with us. And I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent protecting our country. So thank you. In part of the time that he spent in the military, he worked on cybersecurity, working with other nations. And has transitioned into being a professor at Riviera University, where he is the director of cybersecurity management, both for the university and as the curriculum leader there. And he is preparing our students to be doing what he is doing when they graduate. So from there, I'm going to pass it over to Russ, and I think we're going to have a really fabulous, interesting 45 minutes of conversation with him. So here you go, Russ.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. So hello, everyone. I was actually asked if I could share some thoughts today on cybersecurity. And so I put together this presentation. I use PowerPoint. I know it's kind of archaic, but it's a pretty familiar platform everybody's comfortable with. I do have links in here. So afterwards, when this is shared, feel free to click on the links and you can see a lot of the drill down to some of the topics I'm going to be talking about. So this is me. As Jennifer said, I'm a retired Marine Corps officer. I started off as an enlisted man, graduated from Parris Island, got selected to become an officer, went to officer candidate school, went out and did cool stuff with cool people all over the world. I've been to nearly 70 countries, some of them incredibly beautiful, some of them not so nice. Following my military career, I did take a job as a defense contractor with U.S. Special Operations Command, U.S. Central Command, and U.S. Marine Corps Forces Central Command. I'm currently the Director of Cybersecurity Management Program at Riviera. I'm also the Director of the Homeland and International Security Studies Program. And interesting fact, I'm a global foodie. I love to eat. I have eaten foods all over the world. I love trying the street food, which can sometimes have adverse reactions, but it's amazing. And I think that's the best way to get to know people, is to sit down and share a meal with them. So one thing I want to talk about, what is cyberspace? So a lot of people, when you ask them, well, you know, what's cyberspace? Well, it's that stuff with the computers. Well, you know, it's where Amazon lives, or it's where I get my Netflix or my Hulu movies, or it's where the cloud keeps all my data. And nobody understands how the cloud works, right? Nobody. I just know that I do stuff on the cloud and it's out in some server, God knows where. And when I look for it, I find it. It's where Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, all those programs and apps are out there in the cyberspace somewhere. Where do they exist? Well, they have an office in California. Okay, but where's my data? Well, that's coming out of a warehouse in Germany through a server in the Netherlands, which is bounced off of, you know, a transmitter in South America. Okay, so I had a question to pose to you all. I don't know if it's going to work well in this platform, but you know, what do you all consider as cyberspace? So even if you're not allowed, if you're not able to respond, think about it real quick. Think about the question, what do you think cyberspace is? And then I'm going to tell you that whatever you're thinking, absolutely, it's all that. But it's also this. This is the world that I live in. If you look at those words on the screen, you know, cyberspace can be amazing. It's where we play video games. It's where I keep all of my family photos going back 20 years now. It's where we kept last year's vacation photos. It's where we keep our Word documents out in the cloud. It's where we keep our PowerPoints. But in my world, it's also a maneuver space for bad guys to do information warfare, propaganda, manipulation. There's a term called hacktivists, which are, you know, political, religious activists who use the cyber domain as a maneuver space to get their word out. It's also a space for state-sponsored actors and and non-state sponsored actors, which I'll talk to here in just a little bit. So what cyberspace really is it's the space between the places, between your computer and wherever your information is physically stored. Cyberspace is all of that network out there. And it's really, really hard to police cyberspace. When we're talking about crimes that are committed in cyberspace, well, who really owns cyberspace? Nobody. Nobody owns cyberspace. Now, within different countries, they have laws domestically within these certain countries, but those laws are shaped by their opinion of what is a crime and what is not a crime, or what is really important to their society and not important to their society. So who really establishes the laws in cyberspace? The United Nations has made attempts to come to, agreements on behaviors, certain behaviors in cyberspace that'll be allowed and not allowed. You've all heard of the dark web. The dark web is not that hard to get to if you've got an onion router or a Tor router, but it is the wild, wild west. So you've got good guys operating in that space. Of course, you have the federal law enforcement agencies that scour that space. You've also got some very, very, very sophisticated bad guys who operate in that space. You have drug dealers, human traffickers, services. And we'll talk about services here in a minute. Hacking as a service. You can go out and hire someone like an electronic hitman to go out and hack somebody for you, or you can buy their hacking tool off the dark web and employ it yourself. The evolution of cyberspace and cyber operations has really made it accessible to people who are not as technically astute as they were in the beginning. So let's go in the Wayback Machine. Some of you, I don't know who all's on this call and what your backgrounds are, if you're government, non-government, if you work in HR, if you work in finance, if you work in business development. Back in April of 2007 in the country of Estonia, there was a Russian war memorial from back when Estonia was a Russian or a Soviet republic. And they wanted to develop part of the space. So they made a proposal to move this war memorial, not get rid of it, not destroy it, but move it out of the city limits so they could reclaim some of the space for a development project. And allegedly, the Russian government was overtly hostile towards that action because they thought it disrespected the service of their Soviet military men. So there was a 3-week distributed denial of service attack, and that's called a DDoS. And what a DDoS attack is imagine your computer, it gets a question, right? Or your server, your government server for the White House gets a question. Hey, White House, where's President Biden going to be next week? And it's a simple question. It's a simple query. And it answers that in about 0.008 seconds. Well, if you have a lot of what are called zombie computers or botnets, if you've heard the term botnet, people's computers get infected all the time and they don't know they're infected. So while you're sleeping at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, your computer will wake up and start being part of this zombie army, asking that simple question: where's President Biden going to be next Thursday? But the botnet consists of 4 million computers. So when 4 million questions hit the server all at the same time, the server obviously shuts down. And in some cases, the server can actually overheat and burn itself out because it's really trying to answer these 4 million questions all at once. So that's what a DDoS attack is. It's a denial of service. So when you have 4 million computers in your botnet army or your zombie army asking this question all at once, nobody else can get through. So you're denying that service. And I use the White House as an example, but it could just as easily be a banking system. It could just as easily be your HR network. It could just as easily be your insurance company or your hospital. So what it did in Estonia is it shut down the government, obviously, but it did more than that. It scared, it terrified the people. Because not only did it shut down government, it shut down everything. The government shut down all internet activity. So all you had was the money in your pocket. Whatever money you had in your pocket that morning is all you had to barter or buy goods. So let's say in today's world, you go to the grocery store. Well, let's see, you're gonna go to the grocery store. So you leave your house, you drive to the gas station because you're running low on gas. You whip out your debit card, you swipe it, it doesn't work. Swipe it, it doesn't work. Whip out your credit card. Okay, there's a problem with my debit card. Credit card doesn't work. Credit card doesn't work. I don't know what's happening. So you use what little money you do have to put gas in your car to get to the grocery store. You arrive at the grocery store and you see a little bit of frantic activity. As you come through the line, you go pick up your stuff, you come to the line, and you go to pay again, because honestly, who carries cash anymore? Most everybody carries a little bit of cash in their pocket, but everybody's using electronic paying systems. So you go to pay and it doesn't work and it doesn't work, and the clerk lets you know that our systems have been down. So you can't purchase the food you have. Not only that, you can't write a check because the PayPoint system that processes that check is down. So now you've made it to the grocery store, but you can't buy food. So that's kind of what the country went through. And dangerously, it affects other things like your sewage treatment system, the valves that control your sewage processing or your sewage traffic, the pumping systems. So imagine that someone hacks, and we'll talk about critical national infrastructure in a few slides, but imagine someone hacks into your sewage treatment plant and makes it overflow raw sewage into your community and ruins the water system or contaminates the water table. That actually happened in Australia. A disgruntled employee, so it was an insider attack, had set up an industrial control system that automatically handles the sewage. And it's like your pool, you know, you set up your parameters and it does what you tell it to do within those parameters. Well, he had set up that system as a contractor, and then they had a full-time job opening and he applied for it. And when he did not get the job, he went and parked his car outside of the sewage treatment plant, opened up his laptop, reversed all the pumps, and flooded 800,000 gallons of raw sewage into a public park in Australia. So he went to jail, so that was fun. Anyway, Estonia went under this 3-week distributed attack. It shut down the whole government, affected and terrified the people immensely. The US government took notice, and there's always this problem of attribution in the cyber domain. Because criminals are getting very well versed in criminal behavior within the cyber maneuver space, they're able to, you know, bounce their code or their worm or their malicious activity off of innumerable servers in different countries all over the world. So anytime you hear someone talk about cyber attribution, it's normally, you know, we have 99% confidence in. So it's like an intelligence activity. You know, if someone says, who did this? Well, we have 90% confidence that it came from a state actor like China or a non-state actor like LulzSec or some other organization, Gesture. So let's move forward a little bit. But the attribution for Estonia was obviously attributed to Russia. They were disgruntled on the statute. They took action, and the world took notice. In 2008, the country of Georgia, the office of the president was attacked with another DDoS attack. The government websites were shut down, and even worse, they were defaced with misinformation. So instead of just bringing down these centers of information from the government, like whitehouse.gov, where you or DHS.gov or FEMA.gov or the Red Cross. Imagine logging onto that website and seeing and not knowing you're getting misinformation or disinformation. So hackers actually went in and put all this disinformation up, which caused massive civil confusion, fear, and it terrorized the public again. More importantly, during that same time frame, in August 5th, there's a pipeline that goes from Baku to Tbilisi to Ceyhan. There was a target of a terrorist attack inside of Turkey. So the country of Georgia is right next to Turkey, if you know that area. The attack was originally taken responsibility by the PKK, which is the Kurdish movement, and Turkey, which is international terrorist organization. But later there was forensic evidence that came out that it was a really sophisticated computer attack on the command and control systems that led to an increased pressure and explosion. Here's the issue with that. That was crossing what's called the cyber physical domain. And oh, by the way, when the country of Georgia got shut down or misinformation came out, and then the pipeline explosion that next month, Russia took advantage of that and invaded the country of Georgia and took over the breakaway Republic of Ossetia. So it was kind of a hybrid warfare model instead of the old days of warfare when you would launch rockets or artillery or send in aircraft for days before an invasion. Nowadays, state-sponsored actors are using the cyber domain to essentially blind and confuse the populace before sending in forces. So that was a significant milestone there. It was a cyber physical attack, although not at a large scale. When we talk about the pipeline, if you'll remember back a couple of years, just across the southern border in Massachusetts, we had a massive pipeline explosion that ruined a bunch of houses and injured some people. When that first happened, all of us that work in this domain were like, uh-oh, because we are acutely aware of some of the shortfalls of the critical national infrastructure. But again, it came to attribution. And although no one technically took credit for the attack that was credible, it was clear that it was a state-sponsored attack due to the level of sophistication. So now I want to talk about Stuxnet. So what you're seeing on the screen now is an aerial image of the nuclear enrichment facility at Natanz, Iran. It's used to obviously enrich uranium. It's a nuclear power plant facility, but in making nuclear power, you have fissionable material that you can enrich to weapons grade. And the way you do that is you put it in these centrifuge tubes, these long tubes, and they spin at a certain repetition per minute. And as you spin this material at a constant RPM, the heavy material, due to centripetal force, obviously goes to the outer walls, and the lighter material goes up the middle. And that's how you get your enriched uranium. They all of a sudden started having cascading failures in their centrifuges. And the consumption rate, the burnout rate, was normally very, very low. And they started seeing a 20% failure rate, not only a failure rate, but damaged centrifuges that couldn't be reused. So they were puzzled. They're like, what's going on? So what they did actually, and I'm going to tell the story because it's kind of funny to me, but so what they did is they hired a company called Symantec out of Belarus. Some of you may have heard of Symantec. They have a satellite out in Belarus. And a guy named Sergei Ulusin was the gentleman who worked this case for the Iranian government on their nuclear codes and says, hey, something's going on. Can you debug it? Something's clearly not working right. So Sergei was debugging this thing, and he accidentally stumbled on a worm, and it's called Stuxnet. Well, due to the level of sophistication, he knew immediately he had stumbled on a very highly classified state-sponsored actor offensive cyber operation. And he was terrified. So immediately he goes on Facebook, Instagram, everything he could go on and say, look, I'm a happy person. I love life. I'm not suicidal, because he knew when this came out, people were going to come after him or try to silence him. So anyway, if you read the anecdotes to that, he was just really terrified that people would come after him because he knew immediately. So normally when there's a cyber attack, they employ something called a 0-day vulnerability. And a 0-day is, let's say Word comes out with a new version of, or Microsoft comes out with a new version of Word, and there's a flaw in the code. Well, Microsoft might not know it, but believe it or not, there's people that get up every morning and all they do is go looking for 0 days because they're really lucrative. You can sell them to all manner of people, or you can sell them back to the company and say, oh, by the way, this is my name. I uncovered a fatal flaw in your new system that makes all of your users vulnerable, and the company will pay you to disclose that to them. So there's people that make money by doing this. Normally, like I said, all you need is one. All you need is one exploit. Stuxnet, they found 4. So that was really overkill. That's like bringing a 50 cal to a knife fight. So he really knew he had stumbled on something. So the worm Stuxnet had infected.
Sergey make out?
He's fine.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah. They didn't get him. No, nor do I think they really would have. But you see too many Jason Bourne movies, and all of a sudden you think the world's out to get you. So it really freaked him out, as it would me. Anyway, so Symantec infected over 200,000 computers worldwide in many different countries. But it was written and only targeted and only deployed at the nuclear facility in Natanz, Iran, even though it had infected computers in India and all over the world. It physically destroyed 1,000 computers. So you need to think about that. Like I said, when something tries to handle too much processing all at once, it can literally burn itself up. So it physically destroyed 1,000 computers. It burned up the chips and they couldn't be used. Attribution. So when it comes to this attack, it is alleged, although no country has fully taken responsibility, that the United States worked with Israel to develop and deploy this to keep the nuclear capabilities of Iran at bay. Again, no one's ever admitted it, but if you go out there, there's certainly some anecdotal evidence floating around. There's actually another nuclear facility called the Dimona complex in Israel that is actually the sister complex of Natanz. And it's alleged that certain actors went out to Dimona to get their technique down before they deployed it to Natanz. But you may ask yourself, I'm an HR, I'm not Jason Bourne. Why does this matter to me? Well, here's why. Let's talk about, some of this is academic, but I'm going to put it into application. So let's talk about the concept of theft. So in the traditional world, if I'm going to steal something from you, I have to deny you the use of that, whatever it is. If I'm going to steal your phone, I have to grab it and run down the street or snatch it in my car or whatever, and you no longer have use of that item. If I'm going to steal your car, you may get carjacked, or I break your window, or I pop your lock, and or nowadays I could just hack into your car, start it up, and drive it away. But I deny you the use of that item. It could be a pen on your desk. I could steal your pen. Do it to waitresses all the time. All right. My wife is a nurse. She's got sticky fingers for really good pens. So I end up carrying extra pens to repay the hostesses when my wife steals them. Anyway, so in the cyber world, stealing information, whether it be corporate trade secrets, whether it be, other proprietary movies, like Sony Pictures got hacked, which was allegedly North Korea. It could be banking information. It could be your health information, which is very lucrative for intel collectors. It's really good to know that somebody who's married and claims to be a holy family man was treated for several STDs. You can use that to then manipulate him to do your bidding. So there's a lot of lucrative things. So in cyber theft, they could log into your computer, hijack all of your files, and you don't know the better. You're not the wiser. So there could be a drive-by hit that does that, or it could be what's called an APT, an advanced persistent threat, where something gets into your system and it lies dormant and it just watches and learns. Or it could be transmitting data back in bursts every night. So that's the concept of theft in the cyber world. Now in the cyber world also, we have something called the CIA triad. It's not the Culinary Institute of America. It stands for confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility of the system. So let me give you an example that you work at Bank of America, and people who like to make money have hacked into your system. Now, if I bank with Bank of America, obviously I've got $200,000 in my savings account at Bank of America, and all of a sudden I can't get in. I can't see my money. I can't transfer money. I can't take money out. What's going on, right? Well, they're under cyber attack. They're under a DDoS attack, and nobody can get access to their money, and nobody knows that their money is there anymore, and they don't know how to get to it and all this other stuff. That's going to cause panic, because now people are panicking. What's going on? So as a business owner or someone who works in a very large corporation, you want to have, as a customer, I want to have confidence in the system. As a business owner, you better have integrity of the system, meaning that you control what goes in and out. You control the messaging on your website, and integrity and accessibility, like I was talking about. You got to have the gateways all set up so the right people get in and the wrong people don't get in. So the CIA triad is a very big thing in cybersecurity. I know this slide's busy. I got a couple of busy slides. And this is actually some of the laws. So yes, you're not Jason Bourne, but you do have responsibilities no matter what your vocation or business is. And here's several of them listed here, particularly in HR. If you're collecting any PII, personally identifiable information, you have federal regulations, state regulations, local regulations. You may have, like you belong to whatever the Chamber of Commerce or something, you may have local regulations that do that. Things like the Federal Trade Commission Act, Homelanders, financial institutions with the GLBA, HIPAA. We all have heard of HIPAA. And in the educational realm, we have something called FERPA. So it's much like HIPAA. That child is 18 years old. I can't talk to mommy and daddy if they want to know why he's failing out of calculus. You know, I can't do that. The Telephone Consumer Protection Act, TCPA. So you see all these other ones below, and it gets into fair credit reporting and some child abuse stuff. The point is that whatever your business sector is, there are definitely federal regulations as well as state and local and other organizations that can place requirements, professional organizations that can place requirements on what you're allowed to do and what you cannot do. Next one, yeah, there we go. So now I want to talk about some things that are near and dear that all of you are going to see, all of you, in your professional world and in your home environment. All right, there's things called phishing, there's things called spear phishing, and then there's a whaling attack. And it's pretty easy to understand that, right? I'm a Marine, I eat crayons, but this is pretty intuitive. So phishing is a low level of sophistication. So what they do is they send out an email, it's generic, hey, blah, 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 and they send it to millions of people because all they need is one or two to fall for it. You know, the Nigerian money scheme is around for a reason because, believe it or not, people still fall for it. And if it's making money, why not keep doing it? So phishing involves sending out malicious email from a supposed trusted source. Now, you can cut and paste a logo from anybody on an email. You know, you can do all kinds of things to your email to make it look official. And you put a link at the bottom. The link is the payload. You open the email, you're like, I don't know if this is real or not, but let me click on the link just to make sure. When you do that, you just compromised everything, all right? And I'm going to show you some ways here in a little bit to recognize this sort of behavior. At the bottom, you'll see a link at the bottom of this screen. It takes you to security metrics. And it's another website that'll really show you some sophisticated ways to recognize a phishing email.
Russ, are there any kind of new phishing? I mean, we've all heard of the Nigerian prince email.
Oh, yeah.
Are there new phishing emails that you have seen out that are kind of maybe newer or something different than people might not have heard of?
Absolutely. Now, I'll show you some here in a minute. But yeah,
Okay.
everybody uses Microsoft. So you play the averages. You know, you send an email to a company or you send it to someone's home address and you say, hey, this is Microsoft Security Services. We've detected a suspicious penetration. Could you please click on the link below and update your security profile? And, you know, it'll have a Microsoft logo. It'll have an official sounding name at the bottom, Microsoft Security Team. It may even have a fake phone number, a 1-800 number. Most people aren't going to call. They're just going to click the link really quick and go, oh my God. So
yeah, that's
we'll
a good
get to that. Yeah, but you're going to see that. You guys work in HR. I mean, it's easy to target employees of companies and say, hey, this is your HR team. We've recently upgraded our new platform. Please confirm your details below. And people will click on it throughout their workday. You know, they're busy doing this, that, or the other. Oh, here's an HR thing. So that's why, you know, other platforms like Paycor and there's other things going on that people tend to utilize. But anyway, at the bottom, if you click on that, it'll give you all kinds of different ways. Here's one. So this is the Microsoft security team I was talking about. It tells you, I mean, this looks official. Unusual sign-in activity. And if you look at the top, reply to msteam2@outlook.com. Wow, that sounds official. So you look down, sign-in details, somebody from Nigeria with that IP address at this date and time. This must be official. It gives you a phone number, by the way, that doesn't go anywhere. It gives you a reference number. And it says you can go to that Microsoft.com website. Now, let me give you some hints here real quick. If you look at the email address where it says no-reply_msteam2@outlook, if you hover your cursor over that, it's going to tell you what the real email address that went to or came from. If you take your cursor down to the paragraph where it gives you the reference number and it says HTTPS www, if you go here and hover your cursor over that, it's going to tell you what that real email address is. Some people aren't going to do that. They're just going to go, oh my God, they're going to come right down here and click on review recent activity. When you do that, it deploys the payload. You just open the front door to every criminal that wants it. All right, well, to every criminal behind this attack. It's like putting bars and windows and a moat around your house and then just building a bridge to the front door and leaving the front door open. All right, so you really just opened everything up. So that was a phishing attack. And remember that a phishing attack is very low tech. They're sending it to millions of people in hopes that a small percentage will fall for it, because even that small percentage will make them $1. Spear phishing is a little more sophisticated. Spear phishing looks for groups of people. It sends personalized emails. Like they may, let's say you work for a large defense contractor in the area, and your security is compromised, and someone sends a spear phishing email to the research and development department for laser optics. Everybody in that department gets the same email, and it seems official from some nebulous functionary in a different building or a different city that works for the same company, and they're like, So it's a little more sophisticated on how they do it. And because your coworkers are getting it, you can say, hey, did you get this email? Yeah, I got it too. So it kind of gives it some legitimacy, even though not really, because I just gave you some techniques to hover over. The targeted nature of spear phishing makes it difficult to detect. And at the bottom, you'll see there's several things to stop this. Two-factor authentication. Hopefully, you all are using two-factor authentication on everything you do, whether you're logging into your bank at home, whether you're logging into your work account. When I log into my Riv account from home, two-factor authentication so I'm logging in on my laptop, and if I'm not using my VPN, which you should all be using VPNs as well, but if you're not using a VPN and you're logging into your Microsoft 365 or whatever, it'll send a code to my phone. It does the same thing with my insurance when I do my car insurance, my homeowner's insurance, my banking apps. When I try to log in, it forces me no matter what to send a code to my phone that only I have in my possession. Then I'll enter the code. Once I enter the code, it's not good anymore, right? So even if someone intercepted the code that I just entered on my laptop and they try to use it, it's not good anymore. It's a single use. It's already been done. So it's a really good step to protect your systems. So activate multi-factor authentication if anybody you do business with allows that. Something that's making this a lot more difficult as well. How are we doing on time? I'll make sure I'm not drawing on. One thing that makes this extremely difficult as well is artificial intelligence. With the use of AI and learning systems, these phishing and spear phishing attacks are getting a lot more sophisticated. All right. There's been studies done that an AI will actually learn. It'll watch everything. It'll learn, and then it'll craft and deploy an email that seems legit. And more people fall for AI generated false emails than human generated. So here's another one, sales and IT services, and you see it's dynamic customer resource. We've updated, major upgrade to our product line. Click on this link, and it's from James Robinson, the sales executive, and it's even got a pretty logo. Again, fake. Roll over the name at the top, roll over the link. Before you click it, take your cursor and roll over it and see where it really goes. And then if you don't trust it, delete it. Now, before this phone call, we had another conversation. If you use Outlook, there's actually a button at the top toolbar on the right-hand side that it looks like a phishing hook, and it'll say report as phishing, or it'll say phishing. It's in Outlook. You just got to have your IT department activate that button for you. And if you get a suspicious email, it might be legit, but you're not confident. Click that phishing hook, and it'll automatically send it to your IT department and have it flagged as potential malware. And then they can vet it, validate it, and say, yes, you saved the company, or hey, it looks legit. You can do what you need to with this. Whaling. Whaling is a big deal. Whaling's obviously when you go after the big fish, right? So whaling, they go after the CEOs, CFOs, and other executives. Why? Because these people have high credentials in the organization. They have privileges to areas in the network that other people don't. They may have trade secrets, their emails. You may get ideas of who they're working with, what their future projects are, where the company's directing its money and investment. Those are all good things to have. So I'll show you an email. The attacker sends an email of a critical business, important business matter, masquerading as an individual that seems legitimate, blah, blah, blah. They are always personally addressed to the CEO, CFO, or the executive. And I said the difference between whaling and spear phishing is that whaling exclusively targets high-ranking individuals. Spear phishing usually goes after a category of individuals, like a certain department. And then, of course, like we said, phishing is just blanket, waiting for somebody to unintelligently stumble over it and click it. So here's an example of a whaling. It's going to have to Caitlin Taylor at abcbank.com. It is specifically tailored to that individual. Liam Sparks, okay. Impersonation, trying to impersonate someone or some entity at the target trusts. They get this information from what's called social network analysis, where they've hacked into your Twitter account, and because your Twitter is linked to your Instagram, is linked to your Facebook, now I've got all of those, and I start finding out people's names, and I start looking through your contacts. It has an intent. You'll see at the top, urgent wire transfer. At the bottom, it has a payload. That when you click on that, that is the malicious payload. And let's go to the next one. This is a good one to look at. So if you start at the bottom, from Scott O'Connor, and look at his email address, zyxfoundation, spelled with 2 I's.org. And it's sent to Jerry Smith at the bottom, who also works at zyxfoundation.org, but it's only spelled with 1 I. That's the domain names are slightly different, and that makes all the difference in the world. The signature block, Scott O'Connor, CEO. Well, that's not his standard signature block. And I've actually had this email hit my box from my dean, Dr. Tusi. Said, hey, Russ, can you click the link below and look at this PowerPoint? And I'm like, okay, it's not inconceivable that Dr. Tusi would email me on my private account and ask me to look at this PowerPoint maybe for an immediate need. But the signature block isn't consistent with his email address at RIV. So I actually called him, like, hey boss, is this you? He goes, nope. So we're lucky to catch that one. But if you start at the bottom and work your way up. So the second email has a sense of urgency. The first one was at 2:33 p.m. 10 minutes later, this individual follows up with a second email, status, and this is supposedly coming from the CEO, the big man. And then he follows it up a couple hours later, right? And again, the email, and here's what they're telling me, the email viewed on a handheld device can obscure complete email addresses. So if you look at Scott O'Connor's email, it's partially up there. That's because if you go through your phone, sometimes it'll shorten it. And because they shortened it, Jerry Smith would not have seen the 2 I's in foundation. And then at the top, he'll forward the invoice later this week, blah, blah, blah. So this is a good example. If any of you see this, your day has just been ruined, all right? The red screen of death. You have just been ransomware. Ransomware is the #1 vector of attack right now. That's what it looks like. And I'll tell you a story about ransomware. Honestly, when ransomware was first evolving and coming out, it took a level of sophistication to write this stuff. So you had bright people. And honest to God, there was honor among thieves. You got ransomed, you clicked at the bottom, you paid the ransom, they gave you the decryption key to uncrypt all of your files, and you went about your life. All right? It worked because the system worked. It's like getting held up and handing over your wallet and the guy running away. All right? But it worked. Nowadays, we're going to have a conversation or to pay or not to pay. And I am in no way going to influence you one way or the other. I'm just going to give you examples on both sides. All right?
Chris, is there a way? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
For these guys to get caught? Like, I know, I believe towards the end of your presentation, you have some places that people can call up, but like, how do these people get caught, and like, how does it stop?
So well, at the very end, I'll give you the resources to get a hold of, the federal resources. And I talk about the city of Atlanta hack. The two guys that hacked the city of Atlanta did get caught. They were Iranian hackers, and there were two of them, and they did get caught. So yeah, attribution is extremely difficult for the very sophisticated people that do this. But for the people that use this as it's called ransomware as a service. Most of these people are just out to make a buck, and they're not really technically astute. So yeah, they get caught all the time. But your sophisticated hackers, you're not going to get them because they're probably in some foreign country. They're bouncing off 14, 15 different servers, if you can find them that far. And then you're dealing with international law. You know, is Venezuela going to give America access to its internet infrastructure to track down a Bitcoin guy? And then you get into Bitcoin with blockchain and why Bitcoin is a good method of payment and cryptocurrencies. It's just a nebulous network. And we're going to talk about insurance. So here, let me move on to that. Oh, hey, there you go. All right, not to bore everybody, but when it comes to the cyber world, there's a thing called cryptography, and it's how files are encrypted and decrypted. So there's a public key and a private key, and you guys really want to learn all this, take one of my classes, take a few of my classes, and this is how it works. So I have a PowerPoint document on my laptop made by Microsoft that I build. And Microsoft has an encryption, or Microsoft PowerPoint has a certain encryption. You see that key right there. It takes everything I've done and converts it to ones and zeros and alphanumeric code, that encryption key, and then it sends it out into the nether. It goes out into the Twitter sphere, the cyberspace, and the packets fly all over, and they reassemble at my intended target. So let's say I sent Jennifer this PowerPoint. All of this would reassemble at Jennifer's computer through her email, and her Microsoft PowerPoint there has a decryption key, and it's public. When you bought Microsoft and you use that key to load it to your laptop or whatever your IT department did, it loads all of those certificates and keys. So my key encrypted it. It sent it across the cyberspace. It reassembled at Jennifer's computer, and PowerPoint there decrypted it so she could see exactly what I had. So that's how cryptography basically works. And it's not easy. The math looks like something off the UFO at Roswell. All right, it really takes a 1,000-pound brain to work out some of this mathematics. I'm not that guy. All right, there are very, very bright mathematicians, computer scientists. We have Dr. Vladimir Rybov at Riviera University, who runs our computer science department. He is no kidding a nuclear computer guy, math guy. And he is unbelievably smart. He has a 1,000-pound brain. So him and Dr. Pitts, if you guys want to come to Riv one day and sit down, he will break it out and show you how to do this. But trust me, it looks like the hieroglyphics off of the Roswell crash. Okay, so that's how it works. So let's talk about, should you pay the ransom? That's the $10 million question. Because everybody wants to know, hey, it seems like everything in the news now is ransomware, ransomware, ransomware. And I'll tell you, it's not just for businesses. My aunt and uncle down in Valdosta, Georgia, all right, down in the sticks, got ransomed because they opened an email that had a malicious text. They got ransomed for $500. All right, and they paid it. Just because they wanted their family pictures back of their grandchildren and their children when they were younger, and all of that was kept on the hard drive. So, and one question I pose here is cyber insurance. You know, that's a thing now. You can buy cyber insurance. So let me talk about the city. I'll give you a couple of examples of paying and not paying the ransom. The city of Atlanta, March 2018. It was a brute force attack, which means they just go in looking for vulnerabilities and passwords. So if your password is password, you need to change that immediately. You need uppercase, you need lowercase, you need special characters. Do not put them sequentially. Like if your password is word 123 or shift 123, that's sequential, right? 123 shift 123 again. Don't do that. There are these elaborate hacking programs that literally go through millions of passwords an hour. All right, and they're looking for vulnerability. Oh, I found a password. All right, that's what happened. It's called a brute force attack. And it was done by this hacking group called SanSam. And it turned out to be Iranian civilian hacker group. And they caught two of these guys. The Bitcoin at the time in 2018, they were only asking for $51,000 payable in Bitcoin. Atlanta did not pay. They immediately cooperated with the FBI, DHS, the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, the Secret Service, and a third-party investigation team. All of Atlanta's electronic services were affected, most prominently with the police department and the court records. So criminals were very happy. Some of the court records were able to be restored. Some were lost forever. The police dash cam videos permanently destroyed. So if you had dash cam video of a DUI and you were going to take that to court, it's gone now. You've lost that tool for prosecution. Additionally, the Wi-Fi at Hartsfield International Airport was shut down, affecting, that's the most, well, China just surpassed us, but Atlanta Hartsfield was the busiest airport in the nation. 6 million residents of Atlanta were affected. The original cost to restore all of those services and recover all of that damaged hardware was estimated at $2.5 million. Currently in 2021, Atlanta is at nearly $10 million in recovery cost and counting. And that doesn't count the lost revenue due to the city's brand damage. So, Atlanta took a big hit. And at the bottom, I gave you the link to Bloomberg, which will discuss that in depth and what other cities can learn from that attack. But it all started with a brute force attack. A weak password by an employee is all it took.
Would you recommend a program like LastPass or one of those programs where it creates the passwords for you and saves all the passwords and you have a master password for that program? Is that something that you would recommend?
Yeah, those are great tools, outstanding tools. Because honestly, what do most people do? They put a name of their child and a couple of numbers, and they use that on everything they do because it's easier to remember it, especially in today's world where you're responsible for remembering passwords for 20 or 30 different systems. Nobody's going to remember 20 or 30 unique passwords that have to be changed every 90 to 180 days.
Right.
So yeah, those tools are really outstanding. So now let's look at the most recent one, the Colonial Pipeline attack of this year. So 87% of America's critical national infrastructure is owned by the private sector. Let that sink in. Airports are not owned by the government. Gas pipelines are not owned by the government. Electrical utilities are not owned by the government. Water treatment plants are not owned by the government. All right. 87% are owned by the private sector. So Colonial delivered 45% of all petroleum across the East Coast. 17 states were affected. 87% of the gas stations in DC ran dry. So the ransom was 75 Bitcoin, which at the time, if you understand Bitcoin, it's very volatile in the market. There's these Bitcoin billionaires out there that don't really have any money yet because they haven't cashed in. But 75 Bitcoin equated to 4.4 million at the time. And Colonial paid that ransom within hours. Within hours of being ransomed, they paid it. And the software to decrypt was delivered, but it was slow to unlock. And you can read the links at the bottom. And I think that this happened because the people that wrote the code wanted to buy space and time to cover their tracks or to get away. It was a diversion, basically. When the news is concerned for weeks about gas stations running out of gas, they're not really laser focused on attribution and finding these people, right? So you have a slow trickle of unlocking, and that keeps the crisis up while you run away like a smokescreen. So this organization called DarkSide, it's allegedly a Russian civilian hacking group, and the name DarkSide is like when Luke Skywalker goes to be Darth Vader before Darth Vader when he's Anakin. I hate to throw a Star Wars reference out, but Anakin Skywalker goes to the dark side, right? He's a really good guy, and then he becomes Darth Vader. So that's kind of the thing that a lot of people say, hey, wait a minute, a lot of these Russian, quote, civilian hacker groups are really Russian government officials during the day, and they use that tool set at night to go make extra income. So that's kind of a nod to the name DarkSide. They actually published a statement without taking credit for the Colonial hack. they published a statement saying that their only goal is to make money and not create problems for society. So it was one of those wink, wink, nod, nod, people that know that they did it. But again, you get to the problem of attribution. And I put a couple of links there at the bottom. The CEO testifies in front of Congress on why he decided to pay the ransom, because he said he thought he owed it to American society to protect it. But if you look at the Atlanta attack, let me go up one screen here. If you look at the Atlanta attack, when you read that Bloomberg article, Atlanta says, you know what? It would have been, well, they only asked for 51,000, and we're currently up to $10 million in recovery damages. But we didn't let the bad guy get away with it. And oh, by the way, we caught him. All right. So two different philosophies here. Atlanta didn't pay, they cooperated, they got the bad guys, but they paid a heavy price for it. So it's got to do with your principles. Colonial Pipeline got ransom, capitulated immediately, paid the ransom, was slow rolled on the unlocking process. To this day, they haven't caught the dark side because it's nebulous. It's like the old group Anonymous. They haven't really caught dark side, and the attribution is murky. But they were able to recoup some of the Bitcoin. I think they've recovered like $2 million worth of the Bitcoin. The FBI has some pretty sophisticated tools, and the Secret Service do, that they can go get that stuff for data mining. But there's a couple of articles there at the bottom you guys can read, guys and gals.
And we'll send out the presentation to everybody afterwards. So if you want to read further, the links will all be in the presentation.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just had to make sure everything had proper intellectual attribution before I turn it loose. So let's talk a little bit more about ransomware. We're almost done. And I talked about ransomware as a service. There's also hacking as a service, where you can go in the dark web under a Tor router or Onion router, and you can actually hire these people, or you can buy their little tool off the internet and deploy it yourself. This is where a lot of it's, 16 to 18-year-olds get in a lot of trouble. They know just enough to be dangerous, and they try to buy some of these neat little tools, play with them, and deploy them, and they get in a lot of trouble. So the subscription service allows affiliates to use the tool that's already developed. It allows for decentralization, which makes authorities hard to track it down. What's really neat, well, it's not neat, but when you dig into the business model of this thing, the creators of these tools actually get a percentage on everything that their tool is used for. And all they did was sell this tool. So imagine Ford Motor Company selling cars to a bank robber with the understanding that every time the bank robber uses that car, Ford gets a cut. It's just the way it is. It's crazy. That's the way it is. So as the average ransom demands by hackers have increased, affiliates are making up to 80% from each payment. So if I demand $100,000 for ransomware, I may actually collect $80,000 of that and count that 20% as an accepted loss or a kickback to the guy who created it. So I'm pocketing 80%. Pretty cool. And I didn't have to do any of the technological work on it. This guy built it. I just deployed it. From a survey conducted of 1,263 companies, 80% of victims who submitted a ransomware payment got attacked again soon after. So this is kind of you have to weigh it. There used to be honor among thieves now, but now 80% of the companies that pay the ransom are re-attacked soon after. Only 46% got access to their data, but even most of that was corrupted data. So like I said, even if you pay the ransom and they give you the decryption key, you're not dealing with the tier 1 1,000-pound brain people who wrote the perfect code that's going to make everything work back to normal. You may get the guy who got a D in computer science and the decryption key was a couple of letters off and it doesn't work. All right. So just bear that in mind. And some of these are very professional. Let me go back to the red screen of death. There's actually, some of these actually have phone numbers you can call. See the bottom left? It tells you how to buy the Bitcoin. It tells you about it. It gives you a contact us. A lot of these, when you call the number, it's like a phone bank somewhere. It's really a professional outfit, and they're there to make money. Anyway, so 2018, 48 of the 50, as of 2018, 48 of the 50 states have been affected by at least one ransomware attack. And that's staggering. And that was 2018, that was 3 years ago. So I think it would be an educated guess to assume that every single state in America has faced a ransomware attack. and you're most likely not going to hear about it because nobody wants to admit that their system was vulnerable or that they didn't do the right thing. All right. Especially, was it Atlanta? I don't want to misspeak. It was either Atlanta or Colonial that in January had just had a vulnerability assessment, and they had upwards of 2,000 vulnerabilities in their cybersecurity network. Now, all of us work for businesses. Do you have unlimited income to address all of your cybersecurity vulnerabilities? Of course not. All right, your CIO needs to go in and go, okay, boss, we've got 150 critical vulnerabilities where we have exposure. And he goes, that's great. You have $100,000 this year to plug the holes. And you're like, well, that'll cover one. So tell me which one we want to succeed on, and I'll tell you the other 149 where we're going to fail. And you either accept that risk, or you can go buy cyber insurance to help spread that risk over a larger pool. You're not really mitigating the risk, right? Insurance just spreads that risk across a larger pool of payers. So that's a lot on ransomware. So if you need help, step one, get a hold of your IT department. If you outsource it, make sure you have their hotline on speed dial. All right, step one, get a hold of your local IT department. They should be doing the next steps. All right, unless you're at home. If you get hacked at home, if you get ransomware at home, you can go to the FBI, the Secret Service, and CISA, because they have really unique tools, and there's cross-reporting and all other things that go on. All right, step one, call your IT department. The other ones, 2 through 4, those aren't in any particular order. All of them are outstanding organizations that do a phenomenal job, and they've got some really cool tools that most people don't have access to, clearly. So that's where you can go for help.
Russ,
so
with
yes,
your
ma'am.
IT department, I've heard that you should take a screenshot of your email and then attach the screenshot to a new email versus forwarding the email that you received to your IT department. Would you agree with that, or is that something?
That's a localized business process. If that's how they want to crack the nut on that, that's fine. But like I said earlier, if you use Microsoft Outlook as a platform, just have them add that phishing button at the top. Because when you click it as phishing, it flags it as potentially malicious software, and there's all kinds of protection protocols that it goes into at that point.
All right, great.
So yeah, I mean, if that's your local business process, by all means follow it, because that's the rules and regulations you're operating under.
Excellent. Well, this has been, I think that's your last slide, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, super, super informational, very helpful. I thank you so much for your time today. I bet everybody got something out of it. I think being able to, if you're ever in question of the emails that you receive, because we've all received them, you've given us some good ways to kind of figure out if the email is real or not. If it isn't real and we do think it's a phishing, what do we do with that email? Do we just delete it? Like after sending it to our IT department, like what would you recommend that we do with those types of emails?
Yeah, well, your IT department will have specific practices and protocols in your organization. Obviously, if I open it up and it's suspicious to me, I click the fish button, right? And it goes directly to IT. Also, if it's from somebody that you know, like somebody with, or a name for somebody and it has the proper naming protocol for the email, like at Riv, it's rnorris@riviera.edu. Whatever your naming protocol, and it may be somebody who works in a different department that maybe you don't know, but it seems to be somebody within your organization, pick up the phone and call them. You know, just lean over and look them up in the directory, give them a call. Hey, did you send me this email? You know, hey, it's great talking to you. No, wasn't me. So it's always easier to do that. If you receive something from outside your organization that's unsolicited, if it looks suspicious, I would delete it. Only because if it's a phishing or a spear phishing, it's going to be a drive-by hit. It's not going to be a, hey, you forgot this email. The whaling activities are more in that realm, where it's, hey, I tried to get a hold of you. Hey, I tried to get a hold of you. Hey, it's Bob from whatever, you know, that he got off your LinkedIn account. So Normally, if it looks suspicious, you can delete it. If it's important, they'll email you back or they'll call you. You know,
Right.
that's my opinion at least. If it's important, they'll get back a hold of me, and I can, you know. But like I said, I gave you some tools. Hover your cursor over the email address, hover it over the link, and you can see what the real extension is on that link. If you see an extension that says RU, that's Russia. You know, .ru.org or whatever, that's Russia. So anyway, there's different methods you can use to try and figure it out yourself. And if you're still suspicious, delete it or send it as phishing. And then your IT department has all these sophisticated tools and protocols and different things they can do to validate or invalidate it and let you know that you either did a good job, hey, you saved the company, or hey, it looks okay to us, you know, at least then you've got some CYA, right?
Right.
All right.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for your time today. As I said, super helpful, very informational. I think we all got something out of it. And for anybody, if they have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can see what I can do to get those questions answered. We will be sending out the presentation to everybody. So you'll have links to where to send these types of emails if you get them on your home computers, but also you can read up on those, the different articles that Russ had sent to us. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it, and have a great afternoon.